All right. Hello. Welcome to Week 7 DTF Podcast 2018. I'm joined by none other than the people themselves, Mr. Stephen Gurney Goldman.
The people are here. The people are excited. Week 7. We're getting through the season, almost halfway through.
No, we're going to do some check-ins. We're going to do some shook readings for all the teams that we have in the league right now. But I think first, why don't we just start with standard, jump back into last week's recap. So
last week was interesting. A lot of good matchups, a lot of Monday night drama, a lot of teams that needed wins and didn't get them. Ankit. I mean, there was drama.
Yeah. So should we start with the least drama and the biggest blowout of the night?
Yep.
All right. So we take us over to Tommy versus Ryan. Yeah, that's this biggest blowout we've got here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say about Tommy's team other than it's pretty absurd.
Yeah.
He seems to just he drops 150. It's pretty casual about it. You don't even hear from him. I don't know. His team is pretty good.
His down week was beating me at 96.2. Every other week he's been putting up a pretty monstrous scoreline. He's got to feel pretty good. Only thing he's got to feel bad about maybe Jordan Howard hasn't really been pulling his weight as much as Tommy hypes him up. I know he's a big believer in Matt Nagy. He thinks he's a running back whisperer. But when you have James Conner and Todd Gurley to bear you out, you could be starting you could be starting all the shitty people that are starting for running back on my team and still be all right. You got to feel good about Devontae Adams. He's crushing it. Another huge Monday night performance. You just got to feel good about Tommy's team.
I mean, he started the wrong Bears running back, and he still put up 150.
Yeah.
But that's the thing that I think is kind of encouraging. If you're Tommy, you got 5 from Howard. Defense didn't really do anything, and you still put up an absurd week.
Yeah.
Sanders on his bench also put up 17. He's got a pretty deep team, and just there are no real holes. I think the Connor Bell situation is interesting and something that's going to play out in the future. If hopefully Bell is the guy, maybe that sort of is an issue for Tommy. I mean, he got basically an RB1 for free to start this year. But if Connor doesn't stay that way, that could maybe be his only sort of issue.
Yeah, I mean, so even then you got Mahomes, you got Gurley. If Howard comes to life, great. But even if you take out, sub out James Conner, if Tommy's comfortably putting up 140, 150 a week, and you switch from James Conner's putting up 25 points a week to someone who's putting out maybe 12 to 15, still in a good space. Well, I'm not worried about Tommy's team.
Good space, but he has to get the Bears running back right, and I think that looks like kind of a timeshare. He's high on Kenyon Drake. I'm not high on Kenyon Drake. I think he's got Lindsey. I don't know. I mean, RB2 is, I think, kind of maybe a concern if Connor's gone. Yeah. That said, we're sort of nitpicking here. He obviously, so far is the best team.
No one really knows how the Connor Bell situation is going to come out. Bell's not here. He's supposed to be here. I think we'll just have to cross that bridge when we come through it. For now, he's flying high, even headed into the bye week. But we'll talk about that later. And what are your thoughts on Ryan now? So 98.9, pretty respectable stat line. Was that enough for a composite win? I don't actually recall.
It was close.
I think it was actually, yeah. We had 4 teams.
No, it wasn't.
We had 5 teams over 100. Just missed out, but barely. 98.9, you feel good when your team almost puts up 100. But, if you're facing 150, there's not much you can do. I think Ryan's team was made better by the trade with you, certainly at least in the short term. If Bell comes back and he takes over and Connor fades into oblivion, maybe he won't look as great. But, hey, he's chasing wins now. You got to feel good about Tyreek Hill. Carson Wentz looks like he's back to form. Down week from Christian McCaffrey, but I still am not worried about that. Jared Cook might not be great anymore.
Yeah, I think Ryan's team, obviously he needed to make the Bell trade, and he's 1-1 since, so I think it did help him. I still think he's got a pretty shitty team. I mean, Hill kind of hides a really bad week for him because Hill and Wentz put up almost 60. And then he really just didn't get anything from anyone else. I traded him a lot of guys, but he's they're sort of borderline starters for him, which by the way, I don't agree with. I mean, Cooks, he starts in the flex. Ingram sometimes is a flex. Thomas and Crowell are sort of bench for him. Ryan is one of those teams that is certainly better after the Bell trade, at least in the short term, but I don't view him as kind of a real competitor coming down the stretch.
Looks like he's going to have a lot of what was this? Sorry, I opened up another window by mistake. All right, looks like he's going to have a lot of start-sit decisions. Like the people who's good week to week in this lineup. You feel Wentz is pretty matchup proof, but even that you might honestly have a backup quarterback. No, so we have to sort that out. Reek, you got to play him every week, and McCaffrey. But are you gonna play TJ Yeldon every week? Not if Fournette comes back. Keenan Allen, I guess, is a lock, but he's got a lot of question marks. Like his last week, his bench went off. This week, players on his bench are outscoring his starters. I think he's got decisions to make. I think he's got 4 or 5 players you lock in every week, and then the rest might be just man.
I don't count 4 or 5. I think McCaffrey you have to play.
You got to play Keenan Allen, Tyreek Hill.
You do. You have to play both of them, but they're also like boom and bust types. Like you can't bench him. I agree with you, but like Keenan Allen, if you look at just game by game, he'll give you 2.4, 6.3, 6.7. And he's someone who's like not always going to he gets like looks, but Keenan Allen is a frustrating own. And I think like I don't know.
In my mind, you got to play Wentz, Allen, Hill, and McCaffrey every week. So 4 kind of locks, unless I don't know what does Carson Wentz have any really bad matchups down the line? Oh, he's got Jackson 2 weeks, and then the Rams week 15. But even that, like he's gonna be
the Rams defense. You can put a point. I don't think that's a terrible matchup. Like I hear you, but you're right. He's probably got those 4 that you can.
Like Mahomes took apart the Jags. I think you can trust him. At any rate, so we think Ryan's team's better, but still costly.
Maybe we'll get into this later. Do you think Ryan is a threat this year?
I think Ryan's always has the potential to be. Mostly, he makes trades. He's not afraid to. He has had a history of coming back from shitty starts or like mediocre teams to win the chip. So that's the history of the league.
That is true.
You always got to worry out for the people who slide into the playoffs and then end up winning. So could happen. He slid into the playoffs last year from a bad start. Just barely edged me out. A little sorry about that, but it is what it is. All right,
keeps rolling. What else did we have? That was
next biggest blowout was me versus Ben.
Yeah. So big win for you. Did you view this as a must win going into this?
Pretty much. You don't want to start 1-5. So in my mind, like every day, I was like, I'm one Emmanuel Sanders catch away from being 3-3. So I always feel like I'm playing from a game behind where I should be. Like I should have been able to beat Tommy that week. And like this was definitely like my match to lose. Like I started the wrong quarterback and still put up 108 points. Like my team went off pretty good this week. Melvin Gordon, absurd. You're not going to expect 33 from him going forward, but like I am expect like at least like 15-ish points from Julio and Juju. Ravens defense looks like it might be the truth. And then it's just like a question of if I can pick the right RB2 and flex that won't embarrass me too much. And now I have a quarterback headache. But I think my team's capable of putting up points. I'm honestly not super optimistic about my chances of making the playoffs. 2-4 is not a great start. So definitely a big win for me to at least get into the realm of possibility.
Yeah, you definitely needed this one. I agree. I think RB2 and flex are going to be sort of a decision each week, and you have to sort of hope that they go well. QB, yeah, I guess let's talk, I guess, about the Golladay trade. You've gotten, some hate from mostly Jake. How do you feel about that? Are you happy with Watson or?
I think so. Like you said, I think Golladay is a frustrating. I basically traded a frustrating wide receiver for a frustrating quarterback. And since I'm deeper at wide receiver than I was at quarterback, especially since Russ was being inconsistent at best, I wasn't confident at the time of the trade. Russ always has the ability to come back and become amazing later in the season. He has home run potential. Andy Dalton has a lot less home run potential. He might be great for 4 or 5 games at a stretch and then be horrible for the rest of the season or for 4 or 5 games.
MVP, according to Joe. But
I don't know. Yeah, so he's got great. So Dalton's got good matchups for like going into the bye. He's playing KC and Tampa Bay next week, 2 weeks, which is great. Then he's got some pretty. He's got an all right schedule. He's going to face Baltimore week 11. I'm not feeling great about that. He's facing the Chargers week 14, Pittsburgh, week 17, Pittsburgh's defense on the way up. I don't think I can ride Dalton out every week, and I certainly didn't know how I felt about Russ.
Yeah, I answered it a little bit with sort of the bye week things, but very unusual for someone in this league to roster 3 quarterbacks. Are you comfortable with that? Are you
Sure. Like basically this week, well, we'll get into this week, but this week I could probably use an extra roster spot, but I really don't want to have to drop anyone. It's like Dalton's obviously starting for me this week. Deshaun Watson obviously not, and Russell on bye. But I don't want to drop either Russ or Deshaun because I feel like they could be going forward. Right. I think if Dalton puts up a stinker this week, I might be more comfortable dropping him. When Russ comes back, he's facing the Lions. I don't know if that's something I'm really worried about. And I think we've got Watson's on at Miami. I think either one of them could be a good starting quarterback that week. So we'll see. I think I have Dalton because he's got a good stretch of matches headed up in the bye. I don't know if he's someone I'm going to roster all season. That will depend on the next 2 weeks.
But big win for you. 2-4, you're certainly in the conversation. Ben, on the other hand, he had a chance to go to 4-2 and sort of be in that upper echelon. He got smoked this week.
Yeah, just bad. I mean, tough on his running backs. I don't even know who to start. Like he's got a worse running back situation than me because I at least have Melvin Gordon to put in every week.
His running back situation is awful, and it has been his whole year. He's had to really just make up for the fact that he's got really no running backs, and he went back Brown and Beckham. That was his whole draft strategy. And the thing about them is, yeah, they're top tier receivers, but Beckham especially this year very inconsistent, and they don't give you the steady production that good running backs would. Yeah. And I think Ben really has to be worried. He's got, I don't know, 7 running backs on his roster, and you really just never know who to start. Or
Austin Eckler, just he's able to produce behind Melvin Gordon. Like the Chargers are really doing great. They're like humming on offense. I don't know why he doesn't start Eckler. I mean, the week he does, Eckler's going to point up 0 points probably. Like that's the worry.
I also don't know why Lamar Miller is. I think Lamar Miller probably is his best running back, or up there. I don't know. I don't really
drafted. I think Lamar Miller was drafted to be a starting running back, right? You don't draft Lamar Miller to put on your bench. He's at least you draft him to flex.
Yeah, it's really weird what he's doing here. And then he's got Rod Smith, Deion Lewis, who he ended up dropping, Thompson. I mean, I guess it's 8 running backs if you include the IR. But anyway, awful week for Ben. The one thing I will say, as the resident Josh Gordon hater, was that he played a lot. He was on the field a lot, saw a lot of snaps. I almost see him trending slightly up. I still am not super comfortable starting him week in and out like Ben is, but he's at least trending in the right direction where he's on the field and getting.
There's two pass wide receivers you want to own. Like you want to own Edelman or Gordon, so he's got one of them. Like you don't want to own. I think Dorsett and Hogan are going back to much more minor roles with the return of Edelman. Like so I invested in Hogan. I thought Edelman, whatever, he's old. Maybe this is a season he doesn't come back from the injury all full speed. But then, Bill Belichick decides to fashion Philip Dorsett into the guy to own. And now there's 2 other people. Like it's a rotating selection.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm not bullish enough on Gordon to say like you have to like own him or start him. I think he's like trending up with like being on the field for more snaps and getting targets. But I think, now he's like, at least now he's in the fantasy conversation for me. Before, Ben was just like being an idiot, I think. But bad week for Ben. He's still 3-3. I think still very much alive. And
I'm 3-3 in my mind, so I think that's where I should.
Tied. You guys are good.
All right, moving on. Next match, let's do Jake versus you.
Yeah, this was kind of disappointing.
Great Jameis start from Jake. It's like if your quarterback puts up 30, that's tough to come back from.
Yeah, he had Breeze on a bye, Breeze and Thomas, so I was kind of hopeful for this week. Jameis had an amazing game. I'll just talk about my team because I was always going to have wide receiver issues. I basically, when I traded for Bell, I gave up Cooks, which was the only guy that I sort of felt good about. John Brown had a terrible week. I'm still kind of rolling with him, but the other 2, Sanu I kind of hit on, and Nunwa basically was knocked out in the first quarter. Yeah. So that sucked. But I don't know. It's going to be an issue for me going forward about starting the right receivers. I like Gabriel. I think
I was going to say, you got Gabriel on your bench. He's been a pretty consistent part of the offense. Maybe Evan Ingram coming back helps Sterling Shepard get open more often, just less.
It could. I feel like he's going to take away targets. I think I'm going to roll with Gabriel and Brown. And then hopefully I'll be able to flex Bell soon, or Peyton Barber actually got a lot of touches and is someone I think I'm going to be flexing or starting, especially with bye weeks coming up. This was it's a tough week with Enunwa. Other than that, I had no one had an amazing game, but I had consistent scores except for Enunwa. Jake just, scored a lot more than me.
Yeah, I mean, your best lineup couldn't have beat his best lineup this week. Just Jake's team went off. Good on him. I don't think there's anything. You plug in Gabriel for Enunwa. It helps you a bit in the PF standings, but it's still not enough to put you over 112.9. So
yeah.
When I lose like that, I feel better. If I lose because of bad start sit, I feel way worse. So I think I think John Brown's a starter every week. But you've got to decide between Sanu or Gabriel to fill in after that.
Agreed. And then on Jake's side, Winston obviously was clutch. Yeah. Tevin Coleman, I was sort of following it. He wasn't getting a lot of the touches. He saved himself with a receiving touchdown at the end, but not sure what Jake is going to do going forward because Freeman obviously hurt. Coleman, I really don't know how trustworthy he is going forward. I think that's an issue for Jake.
You think neither of the Falcons running backs is going to be super startable going forward?
I'm not sure. They could, we'll see, but I just think it's an issue for Jake. I think, he said, or at least at one point was happy when, Freeman was hurt. He's like, all right, great. Now there's no split. I have Coleman, but that's clearly not what they're doing. Smith is involved in the offense, getting carries. And I think it's going to be difficult for Jake to depend on Coleman. Like I said, he was saved by a receiving touchdown, but he didn't really get, the lion's share of the production as far as, the ground game. So I think it's an issue for him. Tyler Boyd had a big week for him. Obviously, I don't think he's starting going forward. He's got Michael Thomas. But I think it's a good win for Jake in a week where he had a couple buys. And he's, I think, one of the top teams at this point.
Agreed. All right, moving on. Let's do Oleg versus Rohan.
Yeah, so this was interesting. This was definitely a good match. I kind of want to jump right into it. I want to jump into Monday because Oleg had a chance. Sorry, Aiden had a chance.
The Morris Breda debacle.
Yeah, exactly. I see where he's coming from. I think it's still a huge mistake. I think anytime the starter is active and good to go, you kind of just have to roll with it. Yeah, he could maybe split carries, or if he tweaks something, he could be out. But, that's it for a reason.
I get it, though. Say Breda wasn't 100%. Morris has been getting way more red zone carries. So the idea was maybe if they're going to choose on someone to punch it in, basically Rohan just needs one rushing touchdown pretty much. One rushing touchdown and some extra yards. He needed 10? He needed 10 points. I think if Morris rumbles for 40 yards and a touchdown, I could have seen that happen on Monday. It didn't have to be a big game. So I think he was. Yeah,
I agree with you. Raheem Mostert.
Yeah, who the fuck was that?
Yeah. So he's, I guess, the number 2 guy, and he, by the way, 12 carries, 87 yards in sort of the Morris role or the RB2 role would have got him tantalizingly close. Maybe it's even better. He didn't have to suffer that heartbreak. Yeah. But, it was tough to predict that he wasn't even going to get RB2 carries.
Yeah. I could see, I know he's going to get roasted about this for a while, but, I understand. It wasn't a complete – it was I could see the logic behind the decision, and you can always Monday morning quarterback. If Morris put up 10 points, we would all say that Rohan was a genius for doing it. But because
I do want to say, I was getting hate for pointing out – Monday afternoon that he had some free agent options, including, Goodwin and things like that. I said, wouldn't surprise me if, one of the receivers went off. Goodwin went off. I'm just saying.
All right. So aside from that, let's see what we got to feel about the teams. On a bye week, I think honestly, Corey Clement came in for him. He got the touchdown. He put up 12.9 for a replacement for Alvin Kamara. You got to feel good about that. Latavius Murray put up 22 points almost.
Latavius had an absurd week. I think going forward, you have to sort of monitor, Cook, Murray, but I think you have to hope one of them takes over. And he got kind of unfortunate with Kupp missing basically most of the game. I think he came back in for a little, but then wasn't targeted. Rohan sort of had bad luck. Kupp hurt, and then Moore's not even getting running back 2 carries. I don't think anyone really saw.
Yeah, look at his bench. I still like Rohan's team. I still don't see how it's 2-4.
Rohan's been victim of some bad luck in this matchup and some other weeks. He's got a pretty good team. He's got Kamara, but I think he has he has a good team. I just think he has some interesting scenarios. Ingram's back in New Orleans. We don't really know what's going on with the Minnesota backfield. Kupp is now hurt. I don't know. He has a good team, but I don't think he's sort of I like Jake's team better. I think Joe is a solid team. We'll get to him, but Rohan is definitely very much in the mix.
Oleg's team also interesting. He's got the every week starters. You got to start Knock. You got to start Saquon. And then he's got a lot of decisions to make, to be honest. Aside from Des Bryant still being on his bench, Ito Smith could be startable going forward. Alex Collins can be startable week to week. Kenny Stills, I don't know, he might be on the way out. But Doug Baldwin, he's got a lot of bench options. This is
Johnson too. I think is a flex option.
Sorry, I just start over him. I think he's got a lot of decisions to make every week.
Oleg is sort of sneaky because most people don't think Oleg is 3-3, 500. He's rattled off 2 straight wins, very much in the conversation. Hyde, I think, is an issue. I think he may be losing his job, and he's got replacements. Maybe Johnson, maybe Collins, but I think it's when you have a situation where it's just not clear cut. You're at risk of just playing matchups and being wrong. So I think he's going to have to make some right decisions, but. I like his team. I think Saquon is basically #1 option on the offense, even before Odell. They don't really have the pass protection to throw to Beckham. And I think Oleg has a sneaky, decent team and someone who wouldn't surprise me if he made the playoffs and will certainly be in the hunt.
Yeah. All right, moving on to last matchup from last week, the nail biter, Joe versus Ankit.
Yeah, this was a great matchup. Both these teams went off.
Yeah.
And one of them had to lose. Just kidding. This was a great matchup. Ankit obviously needed it. And you look at Ankit's year, and we will. You feel, I don't know if you feel bad for him, but you could because he's second in points. His team has been going off, especially recently. And when you put up 120 and lose, that's pretty tough. The one thing I'll say, and again, you never really feel like someone fucked up that much when they score 120. But I think a lot of, where you point to and where you could have had more points, I think you point to some of these questionable decisions. Callaway is someone that you really don't want to be starting week to week. He sort of felt good about him. I don't want to talk too much about the Gronk trade, but, he traded him for someone he's not even starting. This is all to say Ankit had a good week. Michelle looks great. Rodgers is Rodgers. I think he did the right thing with McCoy. Thielen is a beast. He's got a great team. I just question on the margin some of these decisions.
Ankit's deadly though. You can never count him out. He could be 0-6 right now, and he'd still be saying wins losses don't matter until you get to 7. He could with the points 4 that he has, he's still wheeling and dealing. He's just going for wins. He's happy to take another by his logic. He's happy to take another 2 losses because he thinks if we could even out the playing field, he'd definitely be the strongest 7-7 team if it's in a position for a 500 team to make the playoffs. Just putting up a lot of points. He's got a lot of power to do trades, and he has the willingness to do so. So I think Ankit always a chance to come back.
Roster is really good. I think that speaks well for him. He's got a chance. His roster is really good. You just would feel better if you had another win or 2.
All right, so. Shall we do, now that we're talking about how we feel, we sort of teased our next segment.
We got to give a little bit of Joe play.
Joe time? Of course.
Joe I actually think is probably, I don't know if he's right behind Tommy. I don't know where he stacks up with Jake, but I think he's probably second best. I think, Brady and Matt Ryan is interesting every week. I kind of feel like,
I mean, that's a choice I don't mind making. Like someone was roasting him for making the wrong decision, but even if you have to make that call, like a clunk, like Brady's only had one bad week, like pretty much. He had the week against the Lions, which he just got smoked. But like, I think this is good. I would love to be in that position where I had these two instead of my three. So I don't feel like Joe's in a bad position between
quarterback. He's fine. So I think he has a really good team. I think wide receiver 2 is a question mark. I know he loves Jeffrey, and Jeffrey balled out last week, but I think RB2 is kind of a concern. Fournette, obviously you pay a lot for him. He's someone you count on. We're not really sure what's going on with him. He's injury prone. I don't know how comfortable you can be with James White going forward. Obviously, like, he's had a great year.
Michelle's coming up to take over the backfield.
Certainly. I mean, White isn't going to get that many carries. You hope he sort of saves you with a lot of these passes and things like that. But he's a Patriot running back that's not Michelle, and I really don't think you can be that comfortable starting really any of them except Michelle going forward based on how that offense has looked.
And we talked about, Lamar Miller languishing on, was it Jake's bench? Then Ben's bench, sorry. And now we've got Blue on Joe's bench. I don't know if either of them's super startable. Yeah. Yeah, I'd say I think he'll find someone to start. Like if you get like Kareem Hunt and someone who won't let you down, he's got a pretty good wide receiver core. He's got Gronk. He's got a great quarterback. He's got the best kicker in the league. I think he doesn't have to make too many decisions, and I can see him, holding on to a pretty good winning record for the rest of the season.
Yeah, no, Joe's certainly a contender, and I think one of the better teams, so far in the league.
All right, so now we're coming up on the halfway point of the season. I want to ask you quickly, since we've been already like running over our time, what's one team that should be more worried than their standing suggests, and what's one team that should be more hopeful than their standing suggests?
Sure. So I think more worried than the standing suggests is Ben. 3-3 standings would say he's basically in the mix, 500 on the cusp of playoffs. The roster suggests that he really doesn't have any running backs, and I think it's tough to win in fantasy football when you're starting Powell and Eckler or Carson or any of these guys. So I think Ben is in a lot more trouble.
Also, second last in points for. So if it comes down to a situation where he's tied up, he's not going to be able to make that tiebreaker.
Yeah, his team's not very good. He hasn't played Tommy yet. He's in a lot worse of a position, I think, than the standings would indicate. And on the flip side, obviously we have our little wager, but I think Ankit is in a much stronger place than the standings suggest. Like we already talked about the points for. He's a dangerous team. He has to start winning games and go on a little bit of a run, but he's certainly not in last place and 10th that the standings, I think, would suggest.
Yeah.
You, Aiden, what's your who should be a little more worried than the standings indicate, and who's going to take us by surprise?
So while I would rather be 3-3 than where I'm at right now, I would also be worried if I'm Oleg, because, as you said, he has a lot of decisions to make every weekend. Based on the points for, he hasn't been making the best decisions. He's last place in points for, almost 40. Yeah, so it's 35 points behind Ben. So he's got to start racking up wins because, again, another team that won't be able to beat the tiebreaker if the sort of trajectory holds. And someone who shouldn't be as worried, maybe just because I don't know, maybe because I still like Rohan's team. I still believe that he can bounce back. I think that if he pulls out a couple wins, he's fifth in points for. He's got Alvin Kamara. He's got some good players. If Dalvin Cook finally gets his shit together, then there's really nothing to worry about. We'll see. I think he's got options. I think if he makes the right calls, I think Rohan could come back from 2-4.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Rohan would have been my pick. I think Ankit is sort of an easy pick for this question, based on being 1-5. But I agree. I think Rohan is a threat, and even though he's 2-4, it wouldn't surprise me in the least if he's in the conversation come playoff time.
All right. So quickly, do we want to talk about any free agent stuff?
Yeah. So, I thought this would be kind of a bigger week than it was. I thought
people are just running out of money.
I think that's what it is. Yeah. Matt goes for 46, edges out Ben's 36 bid. Good bid by Joe. it's interesting because like someone like Mac, who had a great game last week and may be the guy, we don't know, in Indianapolis. I could have seen him going for 70 or 80 week 1 or week 2. Sorry, when we were sort of early on doing this. I think Ben especially, it's a big loss for him not to get this because honestly, Mac is someone who you could argue is his most valuable running back. Like his team is that bad as far as the running back position. So it's a good ad for Joe. Joe doesn't have as big of a place for him. You have to sort of see what he develops into. But I like that ad by Joe. We have Rohan adding the Cardinals for 19, which I guess is sort of a matchup.
Yeah, they're playing Denver. Denver's been anemic. People are calling for them to bench Case. I think it's a good play. Slight misread of the market, but if you have the amount of money he has, especially this late in the season, I don't fault you for throwing it around. I thought about bidding on the Cardinals too, so I don't think it's as bad. I don't think it's that bad.
No, I think it's good, and I think people overhype the. If you spend some FAAB money, you don't have to spend. It's not the end of the world. I think it's a good ad. They get the Broncos on a short week. They play in a couple hours, and he plays Ankit, who is dangerous. He's 1-5, but I think. We'll get into that matchup, but I think that's a huge matchup for both of those guys. So I don't fault them for spending up there.
Yeah, and then that's pretty much it. I think no other huge blockbuster waiver things to talk about.
Yeah, Duke Johnson, Jake picks him up. He's again one of those guys like catches passes and sometimes scores, but you don't know. And then some streaming. I added a quarterback and a tight end that I needed, but. Nothing really to sort of write home about here.
Is Ankit starting Eli this week? Well, I guess that'd be a good segue into the preview.
Let's preview it. Let's take a look.
All right. Well, let's. Should we start off with the Ankit Rohan matchup?
Yeah, I think we should. Let's because 3 wins combined for these guys, but some pretty formidable rosters. He is starting Eli. Falcons, Giants, hopefully. Is a shootout in his mind. The thing about Eli Manning this year is I just don't know if he's startable in fantasy. He hasn't put up more than 20 this year. His O-line isn't really protecting him. I see what Ankit is, where he's coming from. He thinks the Falcons will put up points. Eli will have to throw, and that's probably true, but I just don't know if I'm starting him, in a 10-team league.
Yeah. Yeah. So, obviously, that, but then we've got who's even quarterbacking the Bills. So you got to feel good about starting Shady since I guess he's like the only part of their offense now. It's not even Peterman. It's that other guy.
Anderson, I think.
Anderson. Yeah. So I think you got to feel good about Shady's prospects for getting good workload at least. Sony Michel's coming up. Adam Thielen's a monster. Galladay may have a good day. You never know. One of the Lions wide receivers has a good week. So he has a 1/3 chance of having a good week.
Was that a Ben pun? Galladay may have a good day, or that was?
No, there you're right. That's shit. Man, maybe I've been reading Ben's messages too much. But yeah, let's see if it's a good Galladay for Kenny. George Kittle's great. He's going to be drafted way higher next year. Joe Mixon against KC going to have a good. Yeah, I think Ankit squad looks good this week. So even if Eli just puts up 12, 14 points, I could still see him winning on that.
Yeah, so I like Ankit's matchups this week and roster this week. I think so. I was in the market for a QB too this week. Ben's on bye, and I kind of paid up a little bit for Flacco against the Saints. And I just feel like Eli is, he's he's just been pretty bad this year, and I could see Ankit losing because of his quarterback selection here. That's not to say that there are amazing options in the free agents, but I think Flacco, for example, is a good option. I actually don't hate Mitch Trubisky against the Patriots. I think that'll be a higher scoring game than people think. Matt Stafford against the Dolphins. I think there are options, and I'm not saying for sure that Eli won't have a day, but I like some other options on the free agents.
Eli 2 years ago against the Falcons would be a great start, but I don't know about Eli this year.
Yeah, and then Rohan's team, he's got Cam against the Eagles. Kamara was sort of a tough matchup against the Ravens.
Yeah.
Cook against the Jets. He's got AJ Green.
We're going to be at that game. I don't know if that'll be good karma or not.
Yeah, I like Ankit this week. I think if he loses, it's because of the QB position. But Rohan certainly he's got some decent matchups, and certainly anyone's weak, but I'm picking Ankit.
Yeah, I think I might lean Ankit as well. So congratulations, Rohan, on finally improving to 3-4. I think I would be interested to see what the loser of this match has to say. I think if Ankit goes to 1-6, maybe is the shook meter finally gonna start ticking, because he always plays it cool. We'll see if it's 1-6, 2-5, you got to feel better. All right, moving on to the next matchup. Let's say next shittiest matchup, me and Oleg.
It's you and Oleg, or me and Ryan, but we'll go you and Oleg. Oleg 3-3, sort of a sneaky 3-3, as we've said. So talk about your team. How do you feel going into this week? Are you confident? Any decisions? Is this your final lineup?
Feeling all right. I mean, I'm never confident with this team. I'm confident. I think Dalton against KC should be good. He could always disappoint. Melvin Gordon, you got to start him. Julio, you got to start him. Rudolph, those are locks. The rest is all kind of up in the air. Without Juju, I got to put in Crabtree for wide receiver 2. I feel pretty good about that. I think that Baltimore has a chance to air the ball out. Crabtree's finally, hopefully, if last week carries over, he gets some more red zone looks. The big question is Royce Freeman. Right now, I'm rolling with him tonight just because Arizona run defense has been horrible. And if he can at least get a touchdown, if he gets red zone carries. I know Lindsey's still going to be the lead back, but I'm just hoping for something. I feel like it's between him and Wendell Smallwood, but I don't know. I feel like just based on matchup, Royce Freeman might be the smarter play. What are your thoughts there?
It's tough. Yeah, it's an interesting decision. I mean, I haven't watched enough Broncos games to know exactly how they're splitting up Lindsey and Freeman. Looking at just sort of the carry total, single digits, the last couple weeks, he is getting red zone, though. You're saying he's getting he's the back in the red zone. Is that how they're doing it?
Yeah, well, he's got when they can get it. He's had 3 weeks 2 through 4. He had touchdowns in every game. Then basically Jets, they were playing from behind, and Rams, they were playing from behind. So I just feel like against Cardinals, game script works better in his favor.
That's
other options, Wendell Smallwood, who got a lot of carries last week, but Clement was definitely more involved in the receiving. So I've got 2 running backs who are not involved in the receiving game and may lose out workloads to the other guy. So it's not a great decision to have to make.
It's tough. Yeah. I mean, Clement had the touchdown, but he also only had 11 carries. It's tough. I don't know. I don't feel strongly one way or the other. And I wouldn't tell you to bench Freeman, because he could certainly score more than Smallwood. I think it's a close decision. And I hear what you're saying. I agree that this game tonight slates to be a close game. And if it's close, the running backs will be involved. And I agree with that assessment. The Cardinals aren't really fearing anyone. No one's really afraid of their defense.
The 2 worst run defenses are the Broncos and the Cardinals right now. So maybe it'll be a run fest finally.
I hope so. David Johnson better do something. But yeah, I see your logic, and I don't hate it. Wouldn't surprise me, if Smallwood did better, especially because he did get the volume. And
other big question is Ravens defense. So they are being really good this year, but Saints is a tough test at home. So I've been looking up stuff to sort of confirm my ability to do that, because I don't know. The other option is to drop Russ or Fitz to pick up a streamer defense, but there's really no one good. So part of me wishes that, because everyone else except from Saquon on Oleg's side is going at Sunday 1 p.m. So maybe if I'm up by a monstrous amount, I could just bench the Ravens defense, but I don't really feel comfortable with that, really. So
yeah, it's tough, because whenever you're playing the Saints, there's always a chance they put up, 30 plus.
Breeze has never beaten the Ravens, so they are slightly favored. I think the over/under is 50 points from Vegas odds. So it's not
What's
great.
The line in that game? Do you know?
I think it's the total points I think 50. I think Ravens are favored by 3 points. It's supposed to be close, but Ravens are favored.
Okay. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, so what's the implied total then for?
I think it would be a
23 to 26. No, that's 49. Anyway, 23.5 points is what they're sort of projecting. Something like that. Yeah.
They'll probably get 2 sacks. I don't know.
Yeah, they'll have some. The defense is good. Drew Brees, though, also good. But I see what you're saying, and you're right. I just checked free agents. No great options, but like, yeah, if you get like -5 from the Ravens, 5 is a lot. But if you get -2 or 3, wouldn't be shocked. But at the same time, also with those fast-paced games, defense could score a touchdown. I mean, we see that a lot in sort of like games that put up a lot of points. They get a return TD, punt TD, pick six. That is certainly a possibility. So Ravens are definitely one of the best, if not, they might be the best defense in the league.
I think they are. I mean, they've allowed still no second half touchdowns. The only blowout game in Cincy was when they were like injured. They had was their like guard was injured. Like I think they're like the team like defense captain was injured, and then they scored 3 touchdowns in like a quarter. So like since they regrouped, they've not let a second half touchdown. So I'm gonna see. This will be the test. It won't. I'm not expecting big numbers, but hopefully something at least passable. All right, who's your pick for this matchup?
Yeah, this is tough. I think it comes down to some of the matchups we're talking about. It's does Freeman, is he a good start? Does he do better than Smallwood? How does the Ravens D fare?
Watkins catch any passes?
Watkins is big in the flex. Are you going with him there? Let's see who else. I mean, I guess
either him, Smallwood, or Ridley.
Fitz is not an option.
I mean, Fitz is not giving me much to go on so far.
Yeah, and he seems to like Kirk better a little bit.
Yeah. So I'm gonna leave him on the bench. Like I even thought about if I should drop him for another defense, but I can't drop my team namesake. Yeah. I've been thinking about changing it to Juju's Bizarre Adventure, which is an anime reference that no one will get. So I'm gonna keep it at Fitz and Furious until I have cause to truly pivot.
Yeah. Oleg. I don't know what to make of Carlos Hyde. I think that's an interesting situation. I don't know if Chubb or Duke Johnson. I mean, there are a lot of sort of backs there, and they all sort of seem involved. I think that's sort of a weak spot on his team right now, but I like his team. I mean, Hopkins, Landry gets a lot of looks, a lot of targets. I don't know. I'm leaning Oleg, which would put him at 4-3. So congrats, Aiden, on the win. But I think it's going to come down to some of these matchups and decisions we talked about, but I am going to pick Oleg.
All right, so let's move on. We're already coming up on the hour mark. So let us move on to – actually, let's do a quick Tommy versus Ben, since that should be an easy one to talk about.
Yeah, Tommy is good. Ben, not so much. I think, it's interesting he's now going Cohen. I think you want to, if you're Tommy, avoid a situation where you're just sort of like not sure about running backs and it's kind of split. Cohen is a little bit of a trendy pick this week.
He's believing in the Denver run game, so that's another reason to trust maybe Royce Freeman. Maybe I'll get the scraps off of Philip Lindsay.
Exactly. The problem with Ben is his running backs.
Only starting Eckler.
He's starting Eckler. Gordon is trending up. I don't know if I believe in him. I just think Tommy has a lot more talent. The Rams have a great matchup against the 49ers. I think a lot of points will be scored. 49ers are 27th against the run. I think, I take Tommy. I don't think it's really that close. He does have a couple Thursday night matchups, Lindsey and Sanders. Yeah. And I think if they have bad games tonight, that opens the door for Ben. But overall, and by the way, Ben is actually starting Broncos D. So that could be a big swing tonight. If that'll be a big swing tonight. But I'm picking Ben.
So I would also pick Tommy. So congrats, Ben. We'll feel free to wildly change our opinion. Although if Ben is the person to break Tommy's win streak, we will never stop hearing about it for the rest of the year.
Yeah. And if it's because of a Josh Gordon big game, we definitely won't ever stop.
All right, so go Tommy, please. Yeah. All right, you versus Ryan.
Yeah, I think this is a big matchup for me. I'm considering it pretty. I mean, not that me considering it important makes it more important or gives me a better chance to win, but it's big for me. I was sitting at 3-1 before the Bell trade. I still feel. I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, it depends what happens when Bell is back, but last 2 weeks I lost, but I was playing Tommy and Jake. Those are some good teams, and I think it's important for me to get this win. It rates for the projections to be kind of a toss-up.
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy with my lineup. Barber is someone that I'm hoping is going to have a decent game and sort of prove me right there. I'm happy I got Flacco to stream. I could definitely lose this matchup. I mean, Ryan has some decent players, and but I feel pretty good about it. And I just have to bridge one more week until I hopefully get Bell back, hopefully. And I think this is hopefully a win for me.
This could be the week that David Johnson puts up 30 points against the worst run defense or the second worst run defense. So again, I'm banking on a ground game there. The Cowboys always seem to trash the Redskins, so Zeke could also have a huge week. I think that those two guys could carry you to victory, so I'm going to pick you in this matchup.
Yeah, the other thing I just want to point out is I have Flacco and Brown, and I like Flacco, and I can't really bench Brown because I don't have great receivers, but I don't know if I love like that stack and pinning that much on the Ravens in a game that I don't think, I just sort of think if he throws a TD to him, I'm going to be in great shape. But if he doesn't, I could cost myself a win. And it's not really like a safe Brown, although I like him, he's not a safe player.
Yeah.
So I'll tinker, but I can't see myself. I don't know. That's final thought on that, but I'm picking myself too. So congrats, Ryan.
All right, on to the Deion Sanders matchup. Jake versus Joe. So winner goes to 5-2 and takes second place fairly commandingly.
Yeah. So interesting that Jake is sticking with Jameis. Breeze is back. Obviously, he's got kind of a tough matchup against the Ravens defense. We've talked about the game a little bit on this pod. Sticking with Jameis against the Browns, which I don't hate. I mean, I see why he's doing it. I think this sort of comes down to the RB2s for me. Tevin Coleman versus James White. Those are sort of like
Tevin Coleman, the RB2, or is he the RB1 for Jake?
I don't know. Well, this is fair. Yeah, AP I guess could be that's true. I don't know. What's going on with Jake's running backs?
Devonta's on IR. That's pretty much it.
That's pretty much it.
He's got Marshawn's on bye. That's why.
He's on bye. I think, honestly, I think AP is RB1, which is strange to say, but I don't know. I mean, Jake is a good team. Interesting. Michael Thomas is a beast. Boyd in probably what'll be a shootout in Kansas City, I think is decent. He caught a couple touchdowns last week. The interesting thing about this matchup is Jake is going with Winston, and Joe basically has both of his top targets. He's got Evans and Jackson. Brait is maybe a top target in the red zone, but
he's doubling down on that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that probably kind of cancels. I think it comes down to White and Coleman, and AP for that matter. I think it's like those sort of players that'll shift the dynamic here.
Yeah. I think I'm going to go Jake. I think Matt Ryan could have a huge game against the Giants, but Jameis could equally blow out the Cleveland Browns at home. He's been pretty good. Michael Thomas is a beast. Stephon Diggs is a beast. Travis Kelce's great. Tyler Boyd's great. Tyler Boyd against KC. That should be big. Chargers defense against the Titans, who looked really anemic on offense. It just looks like he's got a lot of good players. I mean, if you're Joe, you gotta be happy, obviously, about the Matt Ryan matchup. Kareem Hunt's pretty good at football. Gronk injured against the Bears. You never know what's happening with the Eagles wide receivers. Truly, I mean, Alshon went off last week. We'll see if it's for real. But yeah, so I mean, he's got the Evans and Jackson to cancel out Winston, but I'm still going to pick Jake, I think.
Yeah, I guess I'm going Jake. The winner of this is guaranteed second place for the moment. Finishing up the first half in a pretty good position, with probably at least a 2-game lead, I would think, on fourth. It's possible a 1-game lead depending on how it shakes out. But I'm picking Jake. I think the loser of this matchup is still very much in the hunt, but an important game for someone to kind of solidify second.
All right. Well, congrats, Joe, on second place then.
Congrats.
All right. So we're nearing the hour mark. Any other thoughts you want to leave the people, lowercase people, with before we sign off?
The lowercase people. The capital uppercase people, the people are going to prove themselves this week. It's a big week for us. I think we need this. We're going to get Bell back. We're going to go on a run. Everyone will see it. Mark our words, and don't play this tape if that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I'll edit out all the parts. I'm sure I'm going to get roasted for lineup decisions this week too, unless it works out. And even then, I still deserve to get roasted for having this problem. Next year, I vow to draft more quality, dependable RBs. But happy with my wide receiver depth for now, so we'll see how that shakes out. All right, we're going to sign off from here.
I want to make a last plea to the people listening.
Go for it.
If you enjoy our work, if you support our content, if you're a frequent listener, consider participating. Get on the podcast. We have a lot of the same voices. I like hearing myself talk. I like hearing Tommy. I like hearing Ankit. But I think, it's every so often it's nice to hear from someone else. So if you're listening, if you're consuming the content that we, are bringing you, consider hosting a pod, being a guest.
Let's get a 3-headed pod this regular season. We have yet to do it, I think.
Yeah, agreed. We need that.
All right. Well, you hear them at home, listeners. Call in, listen, let us know what you think, and we will see you on Thursday Night Football.